Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to our Houston Sharpshooters Draft to Glory franchise mode here in NHL 22. So if you didn't catch the last episode, basically what happened, we just had the off season and we lost a couple more players that were with this team for like the last few seasons, those being Carter Ortiz and Cohane Blacker. Cohane Blacker actually signed a 3-year deal with the New York Islanders, so unfortunately we lost him, which I think is okay though, because he did get a little bit of an overpayment, I'd say. 5.815 for the next 3 seasons there in New York. He is their second best defenseman though, so it kind of makes sense that he's getting paid that much. But as you can see with us anyways, he wasn't really putting up a whole lot of points like he was in the AHL. And then also, like, I just couldn't re-sign him really because I don't think paying a guy that's 82 overall $5 million is worth it. But maybe at some point, if he comes back to free agency again, we could always bring him back. So there's that. And we also lost Carter Ortiz to the Calgary Flames. We tried to give Ortiz a contract in free agency, but he decided to part ways with us, only signing a 1-year deal in Calgary at 4.6. So I think it's not too bad, and he could end up being a free agent again next summer, which would be really good because if that is the case, then we could always bring him back and maybe add a cheaper contract too, because I think right now he's getting a little bit of an overpayment just because of the fact he had 2 straight 50-point seasons. I don't know how he's going to do in Calgary because he's getting a lesser role, but you never know, he could do pretty good there. But anyways, before we get into the season simulation and see if this team can make it back to the playoffs or not, we do have one comment to go over, and that is from HawksFan88. He says, I would have Park as your backup, then Sweat could come in if Park isn't performing. So we did sign Park back up. He was our backup goalie last season or 2 seasons ago. He did play 1 year in, in New Jersey. As you can see, he went 10, 15, and 3. And he was back in free agency at the end of the summer, so I was like, might as well just give him a contract because he didn't really want anything. He only wanted a $925K, so we gave him that. And yeah, he's going to be our backup for the start of the season. And if he doesn't do really well, then we could always put Sweat back in because Sweat was a really good playoff goalie. I don't know if he's going to be a good regular season goalie. Like, he had 1 season with us in the regular season. He wasn't that bad, but his playoff numbers are really, really good. So he might be more of a playoff goalie for us in that case. So we'll run with Park and Benson for the beginning of this, and if we need to, then we can make some changes. But as you can see with the loss of Ortiz, our forward core is definitely taking a little bit of a hit. It is nice to see, though, Christian Jacobs make it because he was a former late first-round pick. So he's in the lineup now. Also, guys like Bengston are getting an opportunity just because might as well throw them into the lineup when we have the opportunity to. These guys are probably not going to grow much more, but they're kind of just filler players until we could actually draft some more good prospects in for our forward core. But we still have a really good top line. The only problem is Kapitanov, I believe. Yeah, Kapitanov and Thornton, both their contracts are in at the end of the year. More than likely, I'd say Kapitanov out of Thornton, Kapitanov, and Burns is going to be the one that leaves this team, just because I'd like to keep Burns around if I can, because they're all that center depth is going to fall off considerably. So, but yeah, hopefully this team can still make it to the playoffs. If not, then we could get a good draft pick in, and that could potentially help us in maybe winning a Stanley Cup before the end of this franchise mode. And here's our defensive core. As you can see, it's a little bit weaker without Blacker, but Gage Ronning is getting an opportunity to play some top 6 minutes, so I think it's still not a bad defensive core. And then, as I was saying, goaltending is not really that bad either, so should be an interesting season nonetheless. We'll probably simulate like 2 months and just see how Park is doing as their backup, and if he's not doing too well, then we could always scratch him and throw in Sweat and then see how Sweat does for 2 months, that type of thing. So just because I want to kind of see if we have the best backup we could potentially have. Like, we don't want to have necessarily the best season simulation to get into the playoffs, but we want to be able to just squeak into the playoffs and maybe win a Stanley Cup. But at the same time, I think we might need a retooling year. So if we miss the playoffs, it might actually be a really good thing for us because we could play some of those like top draft picks that we get and stuff like that with our our players we have on our roster right now, like Jaskalainen, for example, and then hopefully they get some good growth. So preseason-wise, we go 5-2. That's not too bad. 9 points in 7 games for Kapitanov. I'll take that. Hopefully our top line can do pretty good this season, but then again, if they do really good this season, they're going to be demanding for a lot of money. I know Kapitanov is going to be a bit cheaper to re-sign than Thornton, but Thornton is one of the best goal scorers I've ever had in a franchise mode, so I'd like to keep him around as long as we can. But yeah, let's simulate to the first 2 months. So let's go to, wait, where are we here? This is November the 1st. Let's go to December the 1st, and then we'll see how Park is holding up so far as the backup goalie, and then we'll make our decision in to put Sweat in or not. But yeah, Sweat might be more of just our playoff goalie. Who knows? But yeah, this team might be able to make the playoffs because we have a good defensive core and our top line is good. But really, we don't have the greatest depth scoring, I don't think. So we probably won't be one of the best offensive teams unless our top line goes off, which right now it looks like it must be doing a somewhat of a decent job, considering we have a winning record. 8-5-2, there's an OT win, OT loss. There's another win, there's another win, another win. Okay, our team is actually doing still way better than I expected, so we might actually end up making the playoffs if we continue this all season long. Don't know if it will, but 15-6-3 to start the season. And Jääskeläinen's point per game, you love to see that, considering Jääskeläinen is probably my favorite player in the series, I'd say, because he's one of the most underrated players. He wins a lot of Selkies, really good defensively, that type of thing. But we're second place in our division right now with 33 points, so not off to a bad start. Let me take a look how Park's numbers are as our backup goalie. He's been really good. He's barely played though, but he's 4-1-1. He's got a 9.16 and a 2.7. So we are going to keep with Jesse Park for another month. And then if his stats diminish, maybe I'll give Sweat some playing time. But I don't really need to play Sweat until we get to the playoffs, maybe at least, because we know Sweat could be a good playoff goalie if he needs to be. But then again, it could be just because we have a good defensive core that he was simulating that good last year. So you never know. But let's go in one more month, and then we'll take a look at Park stats again and see if they drop off or not. But yeah, hopefully this team could just continue the way they started off the season, because so far so good. A lot better than I expected, especially with the lack of depth. Like, you think that losing Ortiz would make the depth scoring not that great, but a lot of our wins, we're scoring a lot of goals, and we are losing a decent amount of games by big scores, but they're probably against good teams, I'd say. 23-11-3 at January the 1st. 33 points in 37 games. So yeah, our offense, yeah, as I was saying, our depth scoring isn't really going to probably be there. But our defensive play is probably what's going to get us into being a playoff team, I guess. Let's take a look at that goaltending stats again from Park as our backup. He's starting to struggle a little bit more, but he's still got a winning record. He's got 2 shutouts, a 908 and a 297. Do I want to give Sweat some time? I think I'm going to give Sweat 1 month just to give Park a little bit of a rest. And yeah, we'll see if Sweat could play better than that, because maybe if Sweat does play better, we'll keep with Sweat for the rest of the season, something like that. But I just want to kind of see a comparison between the two of them before we kind of decide who's going to be our backup for now. But then again, it's going to be probably flipped around once we get to the playoffs, because I don't know if Benson's going to be that type of guy to lead us to a cup in the playoffs, so you never know. Let's go 1 month with Sweat as our backup and see how he does. I don't think he's going to get much games because Benson's a lot better of an overall, but you never know. A lot of wins so far this month, a couple losses. One was an 8-7 shootout loss, which is kind of nuts. But yeah, this team is doing a lot better than I expected to, especially with, like I said, the loss of Ortiz and the loss of Blacker. Our team is still doing really well. 57 points in 50 games now for Jääskeläinen, so that month he had a lot of points, considering he was under point per game to start that month, but now he's well over point per game. So Raimo's having a really good year. Means that top line's probably producing pretty good. Let's see the stats for Sweat. Sweat is 4-0 with a 9.14 and a 2.58. So Sweat is off to a better start actually than Park. So Park is going to get scratched for the remainder of the season, and whoever has the better starts of that will get to play as their backup for the playoffs for a bit, and might end up getting the start of a couple of games and whatnot. Because I think at this rate we might be a playoff team, considering we are the second best team in the NHL somehow, even though we lost some key players, I'd say, to our roster. Because like Ortiz had like 50 something points in back-to-back seasons, but it seems like the lack of depth isn't really the problem, and maybe just our top line's doing well, who knows. There's a couple losses in a row though to start the month. Yeah, here comes the losses that I was expecting from this team. But there's a couple more wins. Okay, never mind. Maybe we're actually still going to win a decent amount of games. Okay, so a lot more losses that month than prior months, but yeah, it's to be expected. Jääskeläinen is still over point per game, 67 points now in 62 games. Let's take a look at Sweat's stats and see if we want to go back to Park or not. because I want to play the best backup goalie as possible. 909 and a 273. He's starting to drop off a little bit, so I am going to take him back out and throw back in park. Kind of give them a decent amount of time each this season. Rotating 3 goalies is kind of fun anyways, so. But yeah, this team should be able to make the playoffs as long as we don't go on a big major losing streak. So let's see what we do in the month of March. We have to get past this trade deadline first, so let's just do that quickly. There's a 7-4 win. We'll just go in as a buyer, and we'll go continue simulating. But yeah, we have 40 wins before March the 1st, which is really good. We're not claiming anybody on waivers. Let's go another month and see what this team can do and see if this team can make the playoffs or not. Let's actually go to the 16th and take it a little bit slower, just because we want to make sure we actually make the playoffs if we are going to be a team that makes the playoffs. Like, I don't want to just barely make the playoffs, or just barely miss the playoffs, I should say, because that would not be great, because then we'd have like a middle pick. So 45, 21, and 5, so we could hit 50 wins this season, which I was not really expecting, to be honest. Let's go to the 30th, see if we could get any wins here in these last 6 games of the month. And we're going to win 2 in a row and then lose 1. Okay, not too bad. 48, 24, and 5, and we have still a decent chunk of games. 5 more games left this season. Where are we in the division? We've already clinched the playoff spot, so we're going back to the playoffs. And Jessica Line in 86 points in 77 games, so that top line must be doing really well, I would assume, which means we're probably going to have to be paying Gene Thornton some big money, and then more than likely Kapitanov is going to be gone, I think, just because we need to let go of somebody that's making a big amount of money, or else we're not going to be able to afford a lot of our depth, and then that's going to make us a weaker team. But good to see us still make the playoffs, even with losses to our roster over the years, because we're playing a 74 overall on our 4th line, yet we're a playoff team that's going to end up winning 52 games this season. Didn't expect that much wins this year. 52, 25, and 5. Jääskeläinen had 92 points in 82 games. What a legend. That's a really good season for a team that doesn't have that great of players on it. Wow. 106 points for the Flyers, 115 for the Canadiens. We are the 2nd best team in the NHL. At least it's what it looks like. There's still a couple more games left this season, it looks like, so we'll advance a couple more days just to get those games finished and simulated. There we go. Now we're done. 109 points. Yeah, we're going to finish the 2nd best team in the NHL, only behind the Montreal Canadiens. So that was definitely a little bit of a surprise in terms of the simulation. Let's take a look at the team stats first, and then we'll take a look at the player stats. So entire league-wise, yep, we finished 2nd place, 9 points behind the Canadiens, which is quite a big margin, but hopefully the Habs are out in like the 1st round or something. Goals for per game on average, yeah, as I was expecting, our offense is not fantastic, but it's still around like mid-table, which is not bad considering we lost some depth in terms of our scoring. So I'm kind of curious on how guys like Bengtsson did, who's a 74 overall. Goals against per game is the 2nd best in NHL. So yeah, our defense is definitely what's keeping us being a relevant playoff team, which is I was expecting to, because we have really good defensemen back there. And we did re-sign like Tara Tukin on a big contract, so kind of makes sense. Power play percentage was not good, so our special teams might need some work, but who knows, maybe they'll just randomly click in the playoffs. 16.4%, it's in the lower half. And then our penalty kill percentage looks like it might be mid-table-ish. Yeah, mid-table-ish, just maybe above mid-table actually, at 84.3%. We had 6 shorthanded goals, which is not one of the most in the league, but it's still pretty decent. Home record, the best is the St. Louis Blues. We had actually the 4th best home record, 26-13-2. And the best road record, we had the 3rd best behind the Habs and the Flyers. Not too bad. 6-4 in our last 10 games. Interesting. Now comes the fun part about player stats. Was it just the top line that led us in points that got us to this playoff spot? Let's find out. So, Raimo Jääskeläinen in 92 points in 82 games. Really good season. Plus 33, 71 penalty minutes. He had a really good season. This was his best season of his career, I think, actually. Yeah, it was. Because he had 89 points back here, but he's never been in the 90-point area. So he just randomly went off this year, which is great to see considering I did give him an extension 2 years ago for a long-term deal. But yeah, he had a couple shorthanded points as well. Really good face-off percentage as usual, and a lot of takeaways. So he might end up winning his 6th straight Selke trophy. Who knows? If he does, that would be pretty awesome. And then what else we got here? Chad Burns, really solid season from Chad Burns, 62 points and a plus 24. He's a pretty solid second liner, but he's probably going to be pretty expensive this offseason. But I would like to still get him back. He's got a plus 159 in his career, and he's never been a minus player since his first NHL season, which I believe was the year we didn't make the playoffs. But yeah, solid player to have on our second line for sure. And then Patan had 38 points. That's a lot more than I'd expect from a 79. So good to see Ernest Patan put up some points, but some of them were power play points. A couple of shorthanded points as well. That's a career high from him. So that's pretty good. Pete Pasquale, 31 points on the fourth line. Not too bad. Minus 10 though. But he has been with us since like the beginning almost. So 30 points a season for him on average. He's a pretty solid player though to have on that fourth line. Left wing wise, Gene Thornton had a solid season, 74 points in 82 games, so he was under point per game, but he had 42 goals this year, which is really good to see. He hadn't had a 40-goal season in a few years, but he's consistently a really good goal scorer. Now he's up to 467 goals, so he will get to 500 goals probably next season if we bring him back, which hopefully I can. George Forster, 45 points. That's way better than I expected from a guy on the top six like him, because he was playing like third and fourth line over the last few years, but gets an opportunity up in the top six with the loss of Ortiz and picks up 45 points, which is pretty good. Yeah, not too bad from him. And then Christian Jacobs in his rookie season, not bad. 25 points, 16 goals. I'll definitely take those 16 goals. Definitely gives us a little bit more depth scoring. Not bad. Lucic, 22 points. Not too bad either for a fourth liner. More of a playmaker than anything. So good to see he's picking up assists at least. Kapitanov, 75 points and a plus 27. That's pretty good, but like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring this guy back. He might be overly expensive, but he's been a pretty solid player. He's not been the most best player when it comes to like the playoffs and whatnot. Well, actually, playoff numbers are actually pretty solid, but sometimes he's really inconsistent, I'd say. But still not bad from him. Scuderi, 58 points. That's really good from an 83 overall. He definitely needs a long-term deal, or else he's going to end up being like Ortiz, where he wants out at a younger age. But yeah, I really like Scuderi. Solid point totals, solid offensive awareness, solid passing, very good second liner. Finisenkov, not bad, 19 goals and 28 points. Don't know if he's going to do anything much in the playoffs, considering he's only at 78, but still not bad. And then Kim Bengtsson, a 74 overall, picked up 21 points. Not bad. Could be a lot worse than that, considering he's just playing on the fourth line, so... Defensively, Teratukin, though, 53 points and a plus 15, not bad. A little bit of regression in terms of his point totals from way back here, but he's still a very solid defenseman. Really like his point totals, and he definitely helps give us some offense from the back end. Sedin, 44 points and a plus 24, really like that from him. That's actually a really good offensive season from him. He has definitely started to pick up his offensive game a lot lately, because like here he was picking up like 20-something points, but now he's into 40-point totals. And his contract ends in a couple seasons, so that's good that we still have him locked up. Hedman, 40 points in 82 games, not too bad. Still only an 84. He's been kind of a bust in terms of overall-wise, but he's not a bad player, I would say. His plus-minus is the only thing that's kind of an issue, but he's still not bad. Only signed for one more season after this. And then McGrattan, 22 points, plus 19. That's not bad for his second season, I think. Ronning, 18 points, plus 13. Good to see him actually step up the fact that we lost Blacker, so that's pretty solid. And Yip, 17 points and a plus 16, like that. Goalie-wise, Benson was actually really good this year. 38, 16, and 4, one shutout, a 9.15, and a 2.5. So only the one shutout, but a really good stat line. Park was actually not really that great. He started to drop off a lot in terms of his goals against and stuff like that. So I think Sweat might end up being our backup for the start of the playoffs, because he had better stat line and whatnot. And he had a 909, 273. So yeah, I think Sweat might be our backup to start the playoffs, just because he might be a little bit better of a goalie to have than Park. So there is that. Let's take a look at the entire league just for fun. Not that we really care a whole lot about the entire league. Let's take a look. So best forward this year for points was Scarabelli with 107. Interesting. A couple 100-point players, but not a lot. Most goals this year was Scarabelli with 65 goals, which is outrageous. That's a lot of goals to score. Best defenseman for points was Marian Helinka in Philadelphia. Cale Makar also up there in Calgary. But Teratukin was top 5 in defensive points, which is pretty good to see. Best goalie this year was Travis Hamonic. That's kind of funny to say. There's a Travis Hamonic in Philadelphia. I think I mentioned that a couple episodes back, but that's really funny. Goalie named Travis Hamonic that picks up a lot of assists as well, actually. Huh. He's only played 270 games and he's already got 11 assists. What's his passing like, out of curiosity? His passing's an 83. And his puck playing frequency is only a 60. So I don't know what he's getting these assists for, but whatever. There's also Bickle up there and Lenefelt. Shogard also hit 40 wins. Benson was up there in wins, which is pretty good. Best save percentage by a starter is going to be Hugo Lenefelt, though, with a 918. But you could honestly say that Benson might be up there for the Vezina, but I'd say it's probably going to go to Lenefelt because of the goals against average. Yeah, it's more than likely going to go to Lenefelt and the fact that his team finished first in the league. But a really solid season from Benson. Better than I expected. And the best rookie for points this year was Ola Markstrom in Philadelphia. Colborne up there for Vegas. Another Flyers prospect up there too. Interesting. So there is that. And now we got to find out who we're facing in the first round of the playoffs this year. Hopefully it's a team we could beat. It is going to be, after we find out this stuff, it's going to be the Dallas Stars. Are you kidding me? We've played Dallas like 4 times in the last 4 years. Last year they knocked us out in the second round. And in the prior 2 years we knocked them out. I believe one was in like the second round. One was in like the first round. So we played them a lot early on in the playoffs, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong with that, but we've definitely played them quite a bit because we've had Battles of Texas a lot. So if you wanted to take a look at the playoff trades, Edmonton, St. Louis, Calgary, and Anaheim, Houston, and Dallas, and in Nashville, and Winnipeg for the West. As for the East, it's Montreal and the Islanders, so Cohen Blacker actually made the playoffs. Detroit and Tampa Bay, Philadelphia and New Jersey, and Columbus and the Rangers. Also, Calgary did make the playoffs, which means Ortiz is also in the playoffs, so that's really interesting. Let's actually take a look at how they did during the regular season, just to add a little bit more time to this episode. I'll go to the contract screen to find that out. And then we will take a look at the Dallas Stars roster. It's probably similar to what we've seen in the last few years, but not 100% sure with that. So Ortiz had 43 points in Calgary, which is not too bad. It's a little bit less than when he got with us, but he's getting a little bit of a less role, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look at his ice time by comparison with us. Yeah, see, his ice time was down by 5 minutes, but he was still almost point per game. Or, he was better point-wise, I'd say. Point per time on ice, I'd say. So, pretty solid stat line from him. Hopefully, Calgary doesn't re-sign him, and hopefully he goes to free agency, and we can maybe bring him back on a cheaper deal. And then we were going to also take a look at Cohen Blacker just for fun. See how good his season was. He was, let's see, really good actually. 47 points in 82 games. So I don't know if we're going to ever be able to bring back Cohen Blacker, but he's getting more of an opportunity there in New York, so good for him. He had a really solid season, but hopefully he doesn't win a Stanley Cup, at least without us. So there is that. And now let's take a look at what that Dallas Stars team looks like. Hopefully it's a team we could beat, and hopefully they lost a lot of good players from when they knocked us out last year, but they didn't, it looks like. They have a really good roster still. So they got Toby Dillon, they also have Maxwell Schofield, they have Ed Rintoul, which I believe most of this is still similar to last year's team. They also have Jacob Campoli, Alex Newhook, and Matthias Jarnquist. Third line, Nolan Foote, Marcel Laliberte, and Jason Robertson is still there, but in 83 overall now. They also have a fourth line of Ludwig Weinhandel, Austin Walensky. I think this guy might be new to their team. Yeah, he's new. And then they also have Jackson McKinley. So that's a really good forward core. Almost everybody on the team is an 80-plus overall. I'd say they're a little bit weak in terms of these 4 players. Just because, well, fourth liners that are 80 overall are good, but it's a little bit weak to have 2 80s on your third line, I'd say. Like, this is where you would want to have, like, maybe 82 overalls. But it's still a very solid forward core. And then defensively, they have Kiskinen and Alexi. Bodie Wild and Miro Heiskanen is still there at 36 years of age. Dropping off for sure. He's probably going to retire soon. And they also have Cody Tapper and Dan Burnett. So I think those guys might be new too. Yeah, those guys are new. I'm pretty sure. Because I don't recognize those names. Yep. So their defensive core has changed up a little bit. It is a little bit weak, but it's still pretty solid to have behind a good forward core. And in goalie-wise, they do have Jesper Weinhandel, who looks like a really solid goalie. Yeah, he's got a .930 save percentage, apparently, last year in the playoffs. Yeah, last year he was really good, and they did win the Stanley Cup last year. I forgot about that. He went 16-1-3 on route to a first Stanley Cup for Dallas. That is insane. So that is really scary to go up against in the playoffs. And then Ron Denny is their backup. And did this guy play at all in the playoffs last year? He did. He only played 6 minutes, making 6 saves. But yeah, Weinhandel is a GOAT apparently. That is a nut stat line to have. But they do have 2 Weinhandels, which is kind of funny. And in depth-wise, they do have Carson LaBarbera, who's a depth defenseman. And they also have Nathaniel Brooks, who's a third-liner forward that they're not playing. Interesting. So overall-wise, I don't really know if we have a chance to beat this team, but maybe if we could get some redemption for next year, that will propel us in the right direction. And hopefully we could just win a lot of games in these playoffs, because now that we're in the playoffs, we're not going to have a lottery pick, and who knows what's going to happen. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of our Houston Sharpshooters Draft to Glory. So in next episode, we'll take it to round 1 against the Dallas Stars as we look to make it back to the second round, and hopefully beyond that. So let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll see you guys next time.